Alright, kids, as promised, I said I was going to do a video lecture when I did the research paper discussion, and here we are. It's the research paper discussion, and here's me doing a video lecture. This is my first time using Panopto, so God help us all. I apologize in advance if like notifications or weird stuff on my desktop pop up. This is just the risk of doing business with Panopto, it seems. I'll try and edit out all that, but again, editing video is a long time consuming process, and we'll just have to see how it goes. Um, anyway, this is like the Inception-esque nested Panopto screen because Panopto gets to see all of my desktop right now, so you get to like see what I do with my computer all of the time. Um, Lots of spoilers and Easter eggs there if you're keen to check on things. But anyway, I want to talk about research today. We need to talk about just the business of doing a research paper. And part of the reason why I want to talk about that is because I find that like most of my students are pretty inequipped for the business of doing research papers. There's not a lot of time in high school to talk about how to do research. So this is my primer on the stuff that you probably didn't cover or missed or slept through or whatever. Um, so this is not like a one-stop shop. This is a guaranteed solution to all of your research problems. This is my quick and dirty way of doing research myself. Now, again, I realize like you've probably spent time going to libraries and seeing databases and all that sort of thing, and that's great. It's fine. There's lots of good stuff that you can learn from poking around databases at the Montclair's library page, but as probably any one of you will notice really early on, like even if you do go to the library page, even if you do go through this whole search engine, if you're like, I want to write a paper about Greek homosexuality. Hey, gay Greeks, woo. As soon as you hit that search articles button, you're probably going to get a lot of stuff that isn't especially helpful. Um, so here's Gay and Greek, the identity paradox of gay fraternities, or only in my dreams could happen, a Greek gay man's experience of intimate relationships in a country that has just passed the same sex union law, the Greeks and the Stonewall, Greek context in relation to homosexuality, homophobia, and gay identity and community. So, not a lot of this is helpful. We were looking for homosexuality in ancient Greece, so we could clarify and like change our search terms, and I'm sure that that would help be profitable. But no, thank you. Um, the fact of the matter is, like, even if you do have a fairly good idea of what your topic is and you want to go to JSTOR or one of the databases that the library offers and start there, you're probably going to get sadly, you know, sidetracked and spend a lot of time weeding through stuff that is irrelevant to what you're talking about when you could be spending that time actually learning stuff about your subject matter and refining your search and getting something useful and helpful. So, first off, let's talk about some basics of what we want to accomplish here. Um, so, there are multiple different sources that you can find online, multiple different things that are worthwhile to search for, to track down, and to incorporate as sources into your research paper. But the goal here is to find articles or books or whatever that show the conversation in academia as it's taking place. See, any topic that you're going to write about in your mythology paper or your humanities paper or whatever, because I suspect I'll be using this video for multiple different classes, it's going to be an important topic because it's going to be something that people are still talking about today. So, for example, like for the purposes of explaining how research works, I'm going to be talking about homosexuality in ancient Greece. I'm going to be talking about gay Greeks, but not like gay Greeks today, gay Greeks many, many moons ago. Why were the ancient Greeks so confused about homosexuality? Um, This is a conversation that is ongoing. Archaeologists, classicists, scholars of Plato, scholars of ancient Greek myth, they are all interested in exactly how the Greeks understand homosexuality. They want to know about it. They want to understand it so they can better understand A, homosexuality in our time, and B, homosexuality and Greek myth and how Greeks understood it. The myths will be informed by that. If the Greeks have a very open understanding of homosexuality, then they'll have a very then myths about homosexuality should not be read as critical. If they have a very low opinion of homosexuals, then Greek myths about homosexuality are probably very critical. So this is all about context. And for my assignment in my mythology class, the assignment is talk about one of the things in Homer. So it could be homosexuality as it pertains to Homer. Stuff like, is Patroclus and Achilles an actual item? Or you could talk about the military, or you could talk about feminism, or you could talk about any number of other things. That's all great. But the important thing is, this is something that academia is talking about. It's something that they are debating about, something that they are trying to understand. I've emphasized in my other lectures that in your research paper you are looking for a controversial subject matter, i.e., something that can be debated. You can argue your position against people who will take the other position. And in theory, your position should be strong, like you should have evidence to back up your position, but it should also be objectionable, like somebody could argue the other way given different evidence. So the goal here is to find an article, a book, some source out there that is from a reliable scholar and that talks about this topic, this conversation, as it's being talked about now. The more recent, the better, is the ideal here. That's not the only kind of source that we're looking for. In fact, there will be quite a few different lists or quite a few different kinds of viable sources. We will list them, so we'll just, get started here. But the goal here is to see what is academia saying about this topic at this moment in time, and to sort of reproduce that and examine it. That's kind of your goal as a researcher here. So let's jump back into the business of research. You'll notice my first step was not the EBSCO-host Montclair State University library search. It was a straight-up Google search. And I realize, a lot of your professors will probably poo-poo you using Google or Wikipedia or other free online sources. And to be blunt, that's ridiculous, because it is an incredibly powerful search engine, and it is an incredibly useful set of tools. And in general, when you're doing anything, research or otherwise, the last thing you want to do is to do it with one of your tools missing, one of your hands tied behind your back. Google is a great starting point. It is not a great ending point. What I want to emphasize is this is where you definitely want to start your research. By all means, look at the Guardian article, look at the Wikipedia article, look at pbs.org, look at theconversation.com, whatever that is. Go through quite a few of these and see what you're dealing with, but do not expect that any one of these is going to be the source that you end up using in your paper. To give you an idea, this is what I usually do when I research something new. I literally did this research project step by step before presenting it to you like this. I am trying to illustrate my method as best as I can. And this goes for anything: humanities, philosophy, history. I intend to do some research into psychology in the near future, and I expect I'll be using the same method even if I end up taking a different track or find different results. This works. It is quick and dirty, and it will get you what you need in 10 minutes, half an hour, maybe longer, depending on how unfamiliar you are with your stuff. But let's start with this basic Google search. Gay Greeks. So we've got this source, theguardian.com, which is some kind of newspaper opinion kind of editorial thing. We've got, of course, Wikipedia, which we'll come back to. We've got a few other sources, most of which I've checked out. We're going to look at the Guardian article. We're going to look at the Wikipedia article. We're going to look at the Livius article down here. The rest are kind of repetitive for our purposes. So let's start with the Guardian, huh? Here we have this article, Mad About the Boy, by James Davidson. This is very helpful that you're blocking off. No, just leave me alone. How about no ads? That would be nice. Yes, it was inappropriate. Thanks. All right, not helpful. Um, so we have this article, Mad About the Boy, by James Davidson. Plato wrote that same-sex lovers were more blessed than ordinary mortals, but then he changed his mind, describing the act as utterly unholy and the ugliest of ugly things. So why were the ancient Greeks so confused about homosexuality? So, first off, I don't typically like articles from The Guardian or from other sort of like quasi-informative newspapery sources online. They tend to be a little bit more what's the word, salacious, I guess, than your average actual periodical or studied, you know, peer-reviewed resource. Um, it's not to say that they're wrong, just they're a little bit more pop-y than is really helpful in this situation. And at the very least, anytime that you find an article like this, you should be asking some questions. Like, is this in fact a reliable publication? Is the Guardian a decent publication of any kind? Fun fact: it is. It's totally like a British version of the New York Times, and is therefore pretty solid. Um, but also, like, who is even writing this article? Who are you, James Davidson? Well, we can just look him up, and we can see he is a professor of classics and ancient history at the University of Warwick. So that's pretty good. He's apparently a scholar. He is apparently teaching at a university. He apparently writes tons of articles for The Guardian, especially when they have to do with Greek myths or other Greek-related stuff. Hey, look, all of these look very helpful for this assignment that you're about to do. But also, what I recommend in a case like this, where you're not entirely sure what you're getting into when you find a web page like this, is do some lateral research. Like, research who this guy is. Don't take The Guardian's word for it that he's a professor of classics and ancient history. By all means, Google search James Davidson. And it won't take long before you realize he is a professor of ancient history at the University of Warwick. As said, he's published multiple books, all of which are probably peer-reviewed, solid, on the Greeks and Greek myths and all sorts of things. P.S. Not the same as James Davidson, the actor. He's apparently kind of a big deal. We can check his own Wikipedia page and see his publication history and other big stuff that he's done. We can go to his actual webpage on his actual campus. Look, there he is. That's James Davidson. Guess he's kind of a big deal. Which means that he's a pretty reliable source. We can theoretically use this article, Mad About the Boy, to talk about homosexuality in Greek culture. That would fly. So let's go ahead and add that to our list of viable sources. Popular publications by scholarly writers, or just scholars across the board. That would work. So if we skim this article, we're going to find a couple of things. He's basically arguing about the Greeks being super confused about homosexuality. If we just skim a little bit, we're going to see that he's talking a lot about Plato. Specifically, we're going to see a little farther along that he's referring to Plato's or Platonic love, which is something coming from the Symposium. We will find out more about that later. But you'll also notice, just from reading this article, that there's this dude, Kenneth Dover, a distinguished scholar, who apparently studies Plato, Aristophanes, early Greek poetry, and is interested in sexual morality and what's going on here. I'm pointing this out because Dover's a big deal, and we're coming back to this. But notice, reading this article, even though you might not know what he's talking about or what exactly his argument he's making is about, will be useful. Like, read it, skim it, see what he has to say. You might not end up using it for your research, but it's a good starting point for like understanding some of the important details of what you're about to get into. If you want this research paper to be good, it means that you're going to have to know what you're talking about. And the best way to figure out what you're talking about is to sort of immerse yourself in the subject matter. See what people are saying about it. Find out who the major players are, like Mr. Davidson here. But if you want an even more direct route as far as trying to figure out what everybody has to say about the subject, probably start with Wikipedia. And again, I realize this is an unpopular thing for scholars to say. Like, nobody likes Wikipedia. A sixth grader could have written this article for all I know. But still, at the end of the day, it's not that simple. Wikipedia, as untrustworthy as, a wiki might be, is rigorously reviewed and edited by fairly intelligent people with a fairly decent process in place to ensure that these sources are solid, well researched, and pretty decent. So you can typically rely on Wikipedia to give you a good overview of what you're talking about, even if it's not necessarily the best or the least biased source on the subject. It's a good starting point. I do most of my research starting with Wikipedia, if not just a flat Google search like that. So let's look at this article, because there are problems with this article. Once again, we get, hooray, homosexuality in ancient Greece. We get, in classical antiquity, we have writers like Herodotus, Plato, Xenophon, Athenaeus, and many others who explore the subject of homosexuality. So once again, we should already be noting, here are some of our major Greek figures. And of course, because this is Wikipedia, you can just link to any one of them very easily. We also notice the ancient Greeks did not conceive of sexual orientation as a social identifier as modern Western societies have done. We should be definitely skimming through, maybe read this article, especially because it's not very long. And we should get a fairly good idea that what we usually mean by homosexuality is not what the Greeks mean by homosexuality. Instead, you'll notice there's this whole article on pederasty. Like, this is a subsection of our homosexuality discussion. It's also probably the most prominent. Again, the most common form of same-sex relationships between males in Greece was pederastia, meaning boy love, relationship between an older male and an adolescent youth. So it might be a good idea to follow up with that. Let's check the Pederasty in Ancient Greece article. Or if you do in fact want to write about Patroclus and Achilles, hey look, here's homosexuality in the militaries of ancient Greece. Also very helpful. Here is love between adult men, and look, it's Achilles and Patroclus. What do you know? It's like this is an important subject in academic study across the board. Great. So again, you'll notice a lot of the things that you are interested in writing about are already being written about, are already something that's being discussed online by scholars, even if it's just Wikipedia scholars. But you'll also notice that this particular article has a lot of these little buggers. Citation needed. So here's the thing about Wikipedia. Wikipedia has, in the last 10 years or so, become much more rigorous about making sure that everybody knows where their information is coming from. So you will see all of these little footnote indicators, and trust me when I say that the most useful part of Wikipedia for anyone doing a research paper is not any of the fancy description and summary, but rather this bit of notes down at the bottom. Here we can see all of the sources that people are citing to make their cases on this Wikipedia page. Now you'll notice, again, anytime that it says citation needed, this is one of the moderators of Wikipedia saying to the other moderators of Wikipedia, yes, it's great that you wrote this, please give me a reason why this is the case. Show me an actual reliable source that indicates that this is in fact the truth. And you'll notice citation needed is all over this page. It is everywhere. That probably means that this article needs to be seriously reviewed and isn't in great shape. If anything, it's too small for the Wikipedia moderators to notice it, or they probably would have flagged it. Instead, let's check that pederasty article, because you'll notice this one seems to have a lot fewer of those citation needed indicators. It definitely has a lot more of these just general footnote indicators. It seems to be a better article across the board. And especially since we're talking about like pederasty, the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, the whole Greek attitude of love between men specifically, it's probably more useful to get more specific in this case. And you'll notice it's not perfect. We got another citation needed call here. But nonetheless, it seems to be a lot better. And if you scroll down to our notes, oh, look at all those delicious references. There's tons of them. It's like 2 whole pages of references. And I realize that like bibliographies and references are like the most boring part of any book that you ever pick up, but when you're doing a research paper, tracking people's references is going to be something you should get familiar with really quickly. This is a great way to track down really useful resources. And once again, you'll notice in our homosexuality in ancient Greece article, one quick cursory look at our resources will show us, hey, look, it's that Guardian article we were just looking at a moment ago. So once again, the Wikipedia page is citing the Guardian article. You'll also notice a lot of references to Plato's Symposium, which the Guardian article was also referencing. There's a lot going on here, but again, we have this sense of some of our major players. We have James Davidson is apparently an actual resource in this case. Maybe that Guardian article is worth a second shot. Plato is apparently one of our major resources as far as like an ancient source talking about the subject, also very valuable. But if we look here, you'll notice Mr. Dover, which we saw in that Guardian article, apparently wrote a book called Greek Homosexuality, and it's kind of a big deal. You'll notice multiple citations to Dover throughout this particular article. You will notice that again, Davidson referred to this book. We should already have a pretty good sense of what we're dealing with. Who are our major players? Who are our major resources? This is good stuff. These are all things that we can use. Now notice, when you in fact write your research paper, I don't want you to use any of this crap. Don't cite Wikipedia in your research paper. Like, include it in your list of resources if you do a works cited page or a bibliography page, but don't quote it directly, because this is just summary. It's not trying to make an argument. It's not a scholarly resource. We don't know who this writer is. This is not a peer-reviewed article. Instead, look for the resources that it's using, the things that it is citing. These are the people who actually know what they're talking about. Dover, Dawson, Nussbaum, Davidson, all of these writers are important to the conversation in scholarly circles. So what you'll want to do isn't, just read the Wikipedia article, cite it in your paper and knock off for lunch. What you're going to want to do is track down these references. But what's more important is once you know about these references, once you know who the players are, once you know who Kenneth J. Dover or Martha C. Nussbaum are, it's going to make your searches a lot easier going forward. But before we do that, I want to look at one more resource, just to kind of give us a sense of what else is out there. So if you look back at our original Google search, we did the Guardian, we did the Wikipedia page. Let's look at livius.org. This is their page on Greek homosexuality. And once again, you'll see, Plato's a big deal. We have this author, Hein van Dolen, who, I don't know who that guy is. We have some details about some of our major subjects. Once again, pedagogical pederasty, that's important. We've got another reference to K.J. Dover, published his influential book, Greek Homosexuality. So once again, we know we're on the right track and that this is a fairly scholarly source. It confirms the other sources we've found. Once again, scrolling down to the bottom of the page, oh wait, they don't have notes. They don't have citations. They do have citations in the texts, so again, like, you can see that here is this whole subject on Plato talking about homosexuality. Great, this is all very interesting, but we don't have a lot to work with here. So the question you might find yourself asking, and which I often find myself asking, is this place legit? Who is this Hein van Dolen? Apparently he loves the Greek language, so that's good. He wrote the following articles, also good, but where's this guy's credentials? Like, is this a legit scholar? Is this somebody on par with Davidson who has a professorship at some university somewhere? I mean, loves the Greek language, okay. What are this guy's credentials? What is livius.org? Who are you people? Well, that's easy. You can click the About page. Livius is a website on ancient history written and maintained since 1996 by the Dutch historian Jona Lendering. Started as a different URL. The present one has been in use since 2000. The website is not for profit, with a couple of exceptions that have been indicated. You can use every photo and text. Great. So it's just a website, admittedly about ancient history, probably by using some decent sources, but it's there was a Dutch historian in the mix at some point. But who is Hein van Dolen? Like, let's check that guy out. So let's get us another tab here, shall we? I know how to do this. Hein van Dolen. No, not Bondolen. There we go. Hein van Dolen. Apparently, again, we get our little about page. Loves the Greek language. That's great. So we've got a page on Wikipedia, which is apparently in German or Dutch, I suppose. He looks okay. He's apparently got a book on Amazon, so that's good. I'm not sure I should be using stuff from this person. Like, look, there's a picture of him in a classroom, I suppose. But, that's how valuable is this guy? How much of a contribution has he in fact made? I would be a little resistant to using any of this stuff on the Livius page, just because I'm not entirely sure that this is a peer-reviewed, respected scholar. Like, he seems to be quasi-legit, but he's definitely not as legitimized as Davidson or Dover or Nussbaum. So I'd be resistant, and I would be sort of raise my eyebrows if you quoted this guy without context or justification. So that's kind of an example of maybe a source that we should be a little bit more resistant to, careful about. Like, once again, it does legitimize a lot of the sources we already know about. Here's Dover and his awesome book. Here's, Plato and the Symposium. Here's Foucault talking about homosexuality. Great. But still, let's instead focus on the stuff that we know is pretty legitimate. Let's look at that Wikipedia article and all of its resources. So first off, this is kind of the end of the road for us, because all you have to do at this point is look up the book. We have this really great 1989 book called Greek Homosexuality that apparently everybody and their brother is researching. And fun fact, all you have to do is click on this and, hey, look, it's the book. Like, the whole book. Every bit of it. Screw your libraries and your stuff. Like, there's definitely bits missing, but, it's the book. That's nice. Apparently all of it is missing. That's a bummer. But nonetheless, at this point, you can borrow it. Like, it's the Internet Archive, so all you have to do is log in, like, create an account, and now you've got the book. But let's say that you don't want to do that, because, why give people information? Let's move to the next step of our research. Let's, now that we have the actual book, see where we can find it. So here's Google Scholar. The great thing about Google Scholar is it is a compendious database of basically all research and peer-reviewed articles out there. Way better than the library, way better than just trying to search JSTOR. Once you actually know what you're looking for, once you have a book or an article that you definitely want to track down, like Mr. Dover's book on Greek homosexuality, you are now 95% of the way there. And all we have to do is ask, hey, Google Scholar, what about Dover, Greek homosexuality? A look. And we've got Dover and Foucault, which, once again, it's an essay by Davidson, so that's great. But here's the legit book. Once again, it's the book, kids. It's just a preview, so we don't have the whole thing, but it's like 90% of the thing. Or, no, that's the other way. We have a couple bit here. We have the ebook. You can buy it. Let's keep looking, though, because, again, you don't necessarily have access to all of these internet resources or all of the print resources while you're stuck quarantined. So let's keep looking. We've got the actual citation at this point. Like, here it is, KJ Dover, 2016. We know exactly what the book is that we want. So now let's check that library page, because this is where all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier. Remember, when we searched for just gay Greeks or Greek homosexuality, we had a lot of problems. But if we say Dover, Greek homosexuality. Search my catalog. Well, there it is. Bam. And there's the ebook. Well, snap. All you got to do is log in, and it's all yours. Notice how much faster it is once you actually know what you're looking for. Again, Montclair, the library page, JSTOR, all of the internet databases that you have access to, they're useful only insofar as you know what you're looking for. If you just go blind searching for Greek homosexuality, you have no idea what you're going to find. You have no idea what's going to pop up or whether it'll be relevant or not. Maybe it'll be, gay and Greek, the identity paradox of gay fraternities, which isn't what you're looking for. This has to do with contemporary psychology, not ancient history and ancient mythology. But once you actually know the book that you want, because you've done the work, because you looked at the Wikipedia page and cross-sectioned it with James Davidson's article and with what you found on Livius, as unreliable as it might have been, here you go. It's right there. And this is like a grade A resource here. So going back to our list, viable sources, number 1, peer-reviewed sources by leading scholars in the field. Dover is the source, the guy who knows about Greek homosexuality. He wrote literally the book on it. So his source is perfect for this topic, for this subject matter. This is the end of your research at this point. All you have to do is track down the ebook, read it over, maybe skim it, check through the relevant chapters for stuff that is particularly interesting to you, and go from there. You're done. But again, you need 2 resources. You can't just rely on the one. So you could theoretically use Davidson. You could theoretically use Dover. You could find that article, that other article of Davidson's. You'll notice, again, here's this article, Dover, Foucault, and Greek Homosexuality, Penetration and the Truth of Sex. That sounds salacious. You could find that. Like, once you have this article in mind, it's easy enough to track it down using JSTOR or the other resources that you've got. But here's one other thing that you can do at this point. You'll notice, again, here is our book, here is the citation for it, here is Google Scholar's acknowledgement that this is a thing. You'll also notice it's cited by 2,392 people, which is another indication that this is a huge deal. By contrast, like, we've got Demoralizing Morality, where Dover's Greek Homosexuality Leaves Us, is cited by 8 people since 1982. So not terribly helpful. This is probably not all that useful to you. But you'll also notice that cited by 2,392 thing is a link. You click that, and here is Google Scholar listing literally every periodical, every essay, every article that has been written that used Greek homosexuality as a resource. Now, again, a lot of these aren't helpful. English Literature and Male Hornosocial Desire, not especially helpful. But again, you've got a good place to go from here. Here is 100 Years of Homosexuality and other essays on Greek love. That seems like kind of a useful subject matter. Here is a bunch of articles on the subject of Greek homosexuality. So we can look up Halperin and see what we find. All of this is good stuff. It will give you a better sense of what you're looking for, and a lot of these could be good resources. But you may be wondering, what about number 2? What is that number 2 viable source that we didn't talk about? Well, we kind of did talk about it. See, over and over I was indicating, hey, what about Plato? Remember Plato? We talked about him quite a lot in class. He keeps showing up all over the place in our various searches. It doesn't take very much reading to find out that Plato wrote this entire book on love and sexuality called the Symposium. Well, this is where we can start looking for that. This is Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg is a repository for basically everything that is in the public domain. They upload it to the internet and you can read it for free. You've probably seen this page before if you've done any of our readings online. So all I need to do is type in Plato Symposium over here in the search bar and wait for the load. Good grief. What is going on? Is everybody watching Netflix right now? Do they have nothing better to do? Here it is, The Symposium by Plato, 1,558 downloads. You click this, here are various formats, and yep, everybody's watching Netflix. There's literally nothing better to do. It's The Symposium. You've got it right here. You can read it or you can skim it, whatever. Like, this is one of the major resources from ancient literature on the subject of Greek homosexuality. This is what I mean by another viable source. Other historical sources on the subject from the era. So here we have three possibilities for research. You could have popular publications by scholars, i.e. people who are writing opinion pieces, people who are writing newspaper articles, people who are just like shooting the shit but are at least decent scholars and are respected by the community. You can definitely write and should absolutely use other sources from the time period on the same subject, like Plato talking about Greek homosexuality, or like Xenophon or Herodotus talking about the military. Take your pick, but definitely you're looking primarily for peer-reviewed sources by leading scholars in the field. These are the people who know what they're talking about, who are engaging in the discussion today, who are making the conversation continue. And notice, again, like, for all that I've spent talking about resources and, like, parsing out what is a good resource versus a bad resource, that whole business took us half an hour, and I spent a lot of time just talking and not actually doing research. Admittedly, it will take you longer if you're actually doing this, like if you're reading the entire article, if you were going through the entire Wikipedia page, if you were looking carefully at all the references and seeing which things keep coming up, like Dover's Greek homosexuality or Xenophon or other writers like this. It will take you a couple hours. But that's it, a couple hours, and you will have all the sources you need to do your research paper. This is not impossible. This is really doable. And what I really want to emphasize more than anything is that this is going to work for basically all your classes. Like, if you want to do a search for psychological studies or like papers in biology, it's going to be the same process. Start in Google, search for whatever you're trying to search for, see what the best or the most popular hits are, try the Wikipedia page, see what the conversation looks like, look at some of the major players in the notes, track them down, and see what you can find. See if you can find the book on the subject that you are looking for. And great, then you're good to go. That's what research looks like, or at least that's what research looks like when I do it. I mean, obviously everybody does this a little bit differently, but this is a quick and dirty method to getting your sources and just running with them. Now, how you actually incorporate them into your paper, that's going to be another topic, and I intend to record a separate lecture on the subject of how to write a good paper. So probably listen to that one right after you listen to this one, or, do your research and then listen to it. Up to you. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful because, again, I find that, like, as much as librarians and English teachers struggle to communicate this stuff, it never quite comes across, and this is way easier than most of what they're doing. Partially, I suspect, because most librarians and English teachers grew up in an age without the internet and therefore do not fully appreciate or understand the power of the Google search. Like, I've done searches through microfiche. It's laborious and painstaking, and this is way easier and way better and also just as effective at the end of the day. But the key here, again, like, do not gloss over the fact that you actually have to read these articles. That you, at the very least, need to skim to see if they're valuable to what you are doing. Research, understanding your topic, that requires context, and context is something you can't just cheat your way through. Like, you can't just fact or memorize it. As much as you want to just, like, look at the major points in this article on pederasty and call it a day, maybe quote it once or twice and say, here's a definition of pederasty, that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for a nuanced understanding of what you are doing, of what you are talking about. And that requires actually reading this stuff, giving yourself context to work with, and going from there. So if you have any questions about the whole research process, by all means, email me about it. If you are wondering if you've got a bum source or a reliable source, by all means, talk to me, message me, Discord me, whatever. But this is, again, a pretty rough and a pretty solid way to get good resources pretty quickly, to become a, if not expert, then at least a knowledgeable human being on whatever topic it is that you're researching. And this is what I want you to do. This is the process. This is what it takes to become knowledgeable. And again, as much as I'm stressing that this is going to be great for like your papers and for academics and stuff, this is also great for just being a human being. Like, everybody talks about fake news nowadays and whether or not, this source is reliable or this source is not reliable. Next time, one of your family members posts some article on Facebook that's like, the people are coming to kill us, you can definitely like check and laterally, you know, observe whether those sources are reliable or not. Like, feel free to call them out and be like, where is your citation for this? Where is this information coming from? Is this a reputable source? That's the cost of doing business when the internet is so full of misinformation all the time. Not everyone is as reliable as Mr. Davidson or Mr. Dover. So, just do this. Get in the habit of it. Like, don't take information at face value. Don't like blow off the business of research. This is how you learn. More than anything that I teach you in class, like, of all of the lessons that I conduct over the course of the semester, I suspect that this is honestly the most important. Because at the end of the day, like, I can give you information until I'm blue in the face, and it just makes you smarter with that information. When I teach you how to research, that's your ability to actually get your own damn information. And then you don't need me anymore. Which is, kind of a bummer for me. Like, the student becomes the master and you go off into the sunset. But no, seriously, be a better citizen, be a better scholar, be a better researcher. If I can pull that off, I will be a way more accomplished professor than I ever will be for, enacting myths in class. Anyway, good luck with Mr. Davidson or whatever you find out researching. Here we are back at the Inception screen. Let's call it a day. And again, I'll have another lecture up for the business of actually writing papers, probably almost as soon as I get this one up. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye.